President Obama said he would have beaten Donald Trump if he was allowed to run again. We'll debate whether he would have and also whether Washington should have term limits. Then the Trump transition and why he's different than any president-elect we've ever seen, and it's not just for the reasons you might think. Also, controversy in Albany. What else is new? We'll discuss what Governor Cuomo and the legislature are squabbling about now and the implications it brings. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. If President Obama was allowed to run for a third term, would he have won? Of course, the 22nd Amendment limits presidents to 2 terms, but here's what the president had to say when he was asked about it.
I am confident in this vision because I'm confident that if I had run again and articulated it, I think I could have mobilized a majority of the American people to rally behind it.
As for Donald Trump's reaction, what do you think it was? He doesn't agree, and he tweeted out, President Obama said that he thinks he would have won against me. He should say that, but I say no way. Jobs leaving, ISIS, O-Care. Hope I didn't mispronounce that. It wasn't O-Care. Let's introduce our panel to hash this out. Former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman is here. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, to his left. And on the other side of the table, all by himself, Bill O'Reilly, former Republican strategist, now a member of the Conservative Party. So let's start with the impossible hypothetical question and actually answer this thing if we can. And Congressman, I will start with you. If Barack Obama was on the ballot against Donald Trump in November, would he be reelected to a third term?
Yes, he would have.
All right, good night, ladies and gentlemen. No.
We have some information that just came out recently about the voters who broke for Donald Trump late, days, if not hours before the election, and they said they really were afraid of Donald Trump, but they wanted change, and they really disliked Hillary Clinton and all her baggage, so they held their nose and jumped off the cliff, so to speak, and voted for Donald Trump.
But if they wanted change, Congressman, why would they have voted for Barack Obama for a third time?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I think the fear of Donald Trump and all of the things he said about all of the different people and all of the outrageous things that were in his background would have, listen, Hillary Clinton only lost by a few votes. She won the popular vote by millions, and he would have kept the Obama coalition, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, in the kind of numbers that he got before, and those who disliked Clinton's baggage but were afraid of Trump and chose Trump would have stayed with Obama. I believe that.
Bad Hillary, and that would have led Obama to win.
To me, this is like, would Marciano beat Ali? And Marciano's great day. I mean, this is silly season stuff.
Yeah,
but just because
people talk about that forever.
Forever. Yeah, I would love to watch that fight. I mean, Marciano just a bull, and Ali was a beautiful fighter. But in this one, I think people were ready for change. I think they wanted to make that change. Having said that, I think President Obama would have captured more African American vote, and that may have actually put him over.
His popularity is above 50%. I mean, it dwarfs what either...
In part, that's because he was exiting. He's the exiting president, and they always look better on the way out. But, I don't know that he would have done it, but I think he would have had a higher percentage of black vote, and that may have been enough to put him over.
Dominic Carter.
States.
I bet my life on this. It wouldn't even have been close. Obama would have won, period. The power of incumbency. And this is something the Democrats are going to have to fight against if Trump runs for a second term. The power of incumbency. If Obama was on the ballot, he's a much more disciplined candidate and a much better candidate than Hillary Clinton. The black vote would have turned out, to Bill's point, in record numbers that did not turn out for Hillary. The Latino vote would have came in mass numbers to Obama. That black Latino coalition, as we have witnessed in each of Obama's victory with progressives and liberals, is hard to beat. Ask Mitt Romney, go ask John McCain. So it would not even have been close. Plus, Hillary Clinton's problem, Andrew, she played it too safe. Yeah. You cannot. Donald Trump, I've been saying this night after night, he's not the type of person to underestimate ever. You cannot slip or turn your back on him. And she was already measuring the drapes, and Bill was working on his title as the first
gentleman,
first husband. And they forgot to reach out to the voters in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and other battleground states. And thus, but Obama, it would not even been close.
Let me take 2 of those battleground states, Congressman, Michigan and Wisconsin. Obama shows up campaigning for a third term. hi, I saved the auto industry. Remember that? There would have been no auto industry in the United States. GM was bankrupt. I mean, I would think that alone, you add to the demographics and the turnout from minority communities that didn't show up. I mean, I would think that argument alone would have won him those states.
I agree with you. And one other element is a lot of those folks who voted for Donald Trump at the last minute voted for Obama twice. And I'm talking about white, middle class, and working people voted for Barack Hussein Obama twice, and they might yet have stayed with him because he was relatively scandal-free as opposed to the Clinton baggage going back 10, 20, 30 years.
So, Dominic, let me ask you another question, because Obama more or less put himself on the ballot this fall, and he said as much in trying to gin up support for Hillary Clinton. Why couldn't he keep his coalition in place and get them out to the polling places for Hillary Clinton?
Let me break this down to the common denominator so that everyone can understand. Voters were just not feeling Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is not Barack Obama. He brought her to the dance, but he couldn't finish it. And I thought, honestly, that the president made a mistake. He went out there a little too much for Hillary, in my opinion. I think he should have did 1, 2 events, but I think on the final day he did 6 events in one day, capping the night with that massive rally in Philadelphia. I just thought it was too much, because at the end of the day, voters said, and the FBI reminded us, this is a flawed candidate. Oops, we didn't find anything, but we're still investigating. And I think that Comey and the FBI completely, and it was unfair to Hillary Clinton. Let's be honest about it. I mean, you know, she's in a bad position. It was really unfair, but they tipped the scales against her, the FBI.
Bill, you speak Republican. We've said a couple of times during the course of this conversation that Obama's administration has been scandal-free. I don't think that's the way Fox News viewers or Breitbart readers would look at it. Would that have been enough to help Trump beat Obama if he had been on the ballot?
I mean, Republicans and conservatives, and I include myself in that, were not fans of President Obama. There's no question about it. Although, to heck with scandals, we didn't see a lot there. We saw the country veering to the left. We saw international issues that we disagreed with. But all that said, and there were a lot of people that wanted a change in this country after 8 years, that's natural. All that said, President Obama also would have avoided having a Bernie Sanders primary. There wouldn't have been a primary, and that really cut into Hillary Clinton. And a lot of those Sanders voters, or enough of them, went over to Trump at the end of the day. That wouldn't have happened.
So the one thing that stopped President Obama from running again is the 22nd Amendment, which was put in place after FDR was elected 4 times. And it holds to the tradition of George Washington with only 2 terms. Should we have a 22nd Amendment? Why should we prevent somebody like Barack Obama from running again, or Donald Trump if he manages to get through 2 terms and the voters seem happy enough with him? Why shouldn't the President of the United States be allowed to remain on the ballot, Congressman?
Well, one could argue, as George Washington argued, that 2 terms is enough. Otherwise, there's a tendency for a person with so much power, meaning the president, to get a little carried away, filled with himself or herself, and therein lies some dangers.
But wouldn't the voters have the say on that?
They would, but as Dominic mentioned, the power of incumbency is powerful.
They really wouldn't have technically, yes, to answer your question, but they would not, because it is, if a president does, let's say, a halfway decent job for the American people, the power of the presidency, giving away election year goodies, the whole White House operation coming to a state, for an event with the Secret Service and all the aides, and so it's very hard to beat that. It is extremely hard. Ask Mitt Romney how easy it is to beat an incumbent president.
That's fair, but I also look back to one of the more popular New York governors in recent history, Mario Cuomo, the late Mario Cuomo. He got 3 terms. He got 12 years in office. He lost after the 3rd term, correct?
After the 3rd term.
I wasn't sure if I was still on holiday.
Oh, you got it right. You got it right.
But voters rejected him as he sought another one, did they?
Right, with a relative unknown.
Right.
They had Al D'Amato went and found somebody that voters had not heard of, a little-known state senator from Peekskill by the name of George Pataki, who basically ran a campaign of ABC, anybody but Cuomo, and thus he won. But But that's 3 terms. That's 3.
Right.
Ed Koch had 3.
Right.
You know, as mayor.
I think the congressman is right. I like the George Washington example of 8 years. And, you know, if Washington, the power of Washington's presidency was nothing compared to the power of the presidency today. Just it is in light of the country's status in the world, and plus all the powers that the federal government has taken from the states. There's so much power there. I think you need to set that limit.
We're talking about term limits on the executive, but term limits for congressional elected officials is also on the agenda. Donald Trump, he's talked about it, and here's what he had to say about congressional term limits while he was on the trail.
But there's another major announcement I'm going to make today as part of our pledge to drain the swamp. If I'm elected president, I will push for a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on all members of Congress.
Congressman, that would have affected you at one point.
It would have, and I did 150 town hall meetings in my 16 years in the House, and it came up just at about almost every town hall meeting. Why aren't there term limits? There's a difference, I think, between the power of a president versus the power of a House member who only has 2 years. The analogy is, would you say to a doctor, hey, if you have more than 2 years experience or 4 years or 6 years experience out of med school, I'm not going to use you. I'm going to use somebody right out of medical school. No, you want someone with experience. And there are arguably term limits already on House members. After every 2 years, you're up for re-election. I get it, the same problem with the power of incumbents, but after the first 2 years, you're barely known by most of your constituents. It gets better as you move along. But I would say there is a distinction between being a lowly House member and the President of the United States.
Lowly House member, come on.
Well, it's all relative. I felt my time in the House was a true privilege, and we got a lot done.
Nothing lowly about it. But didn't the congressman just make my argument for the 22nd Amendment to be repealed?
I actually, I've come to support term limits for members of Congress and in the state because I think we see this professional political class that's out there. I'm part of it. I help elect them that you just can't get rid of once they're in there.
But that's the other thing. You never go away. I mean, we don't want you to go away. But you're not term limited. So, the apparatus that supports these professional politicians remains in place.
Do you know, by the way,
I gotta ask Bill a question. How many years do you say, how much experience is too much for the people?
Yeah, you have to stagger it. I think obviously you don't want a freshman class coming in that where there's no seniority available. But I don't know whether it's 8, 10, 12 years, 12 years probably, something in that range. That's enough time to get some things done. Interestingly, most people don't know that term limits are in the official Republican Party platform nationally. Republicans forget that in Washington
is that
every
the
year.
president is so powerful to have a House of Representatives and a Congress that can match the president's power as they should
You need
in a
seniority.
co-equal branch of government. You need people in the Congress with experience who can deal with the powerful White House apparatus.
It can't be just a couple of terms. I agree. You
Right.
need some seniority. You need to learn the game.
No time to get into this, but for my money, the dumbest term limit in America is Virginia governor. 1 term and you're gone. Makes no sense
Lame
to
duck,
me.
yeah.
Makes no sense to me.
Makes a lot of sense to me. I won't get into my crook element, but it makes a lot of sense
Yeah,
to
but then
me.
you have to learn all these names all over again.
It's
so
okay.
confusing.
It's okay.
All right. Donald Trump promised he would drain the swamp and couldn't be bought. So why are top donors getting top spots in his administration? We'll answer that question next.